Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Icehouse webinar. I'm Bryar Stewart, the Community Manager at the Icehouse. I'm really excited to have Sandra Matthews with us, an Icehouse Coach based in Tairawhiti, and I'm just looking forward to chatting to her. She is regional, which is great. We love having our coaches in regional spaces and obviously a national organisation, and it's great to be able to get to know you today, Sandra. So thanks heaps for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bryar.
Awesome. Well, I like to start these sort of one-on-one get to knowing our coaches conversations with some quick fire questions. So the first one always is, what is your coffee order?
Right. So I'm actually a tea drinker mostly.
Nice.
So I drink English breakfast. When I'm traveling, I will have a coffee to keep myself going. And we do have an espresso machine at home. So I'll have one every now and again, but mainly a tea drinker.
Nice. Good on you. That's great. When are you most relaxed?
Oh, I'm most relaxed when I'm at the beach. I just love water. It relaxes me, calms me, and re-energizes me. So yeah, the beach.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Non-fiction or fiction?
Oh, that's an interesting one. A bit of both, really. So I love stories of Australian outback and the love stories and what's happening in the outback. So I love those sorts of stories. But I also love reading books by really prominent women like Julia Gillard and Catherine Fox and a few other ladies. So yeah, a bit of both, really. Yeah.
Nice. Good to dip in and out of both. They both have their pros, so that's great. Well, what are you reading or listening to right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I did write down that because I've got a little pile of books about this big. So I'm reading two at the moment. So Women in Leadership by Julia Gillard and Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. And the other one is Womankind. So it's Unlocking the Power of Women Supporting Women. And that's by Dr. Kirsten Ferguson and Catherine Fox. So I tend to dip in and out of books a little bit. I'll read to a certain point and then I'll think, oh, someone's told me about this book, and I'll go to the next book. So that's why I've got two books on the go at the moment. But they're such great books.
Awesome. Yeah. No, great options for reading and listening to at the moment. Favorite place in the world?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. There's so much opportunity out everywhere in the world and such beautiful places. I am Australian and I have a soft spot for my home country. And I think there's no place like home, and it's such a diverse country. So for me, probably Australia.
I did notice the accent actually. And then when you said, I've got a thing for Australian outback, I was like, I'm sure of it. That's awesome. First ever job.
Oh, wow. So my first ever job was in a shoe shop. And I think it was Williams, the shoeman, when I was at school. I might have been about 15, I think. I was really, really bad at selling shoes. So I lasted, I think, about 12 months. And then I got another job at Woolworths Variety. So back in those days, they had a variety shop, which had a cafe and different items of clothing and things in it. So I was a cashier chick at Woolworths Variety as well.
Awesome. I love hearing where everyone starts. It's a nice way to launch into the next one, which is, who is Sandra? Let us know a little bit about yourself and maybe your career journey so far.
Yeah, so I am based in Tairawhiti and I'm 50 kilometres northwest of Gisborne. I'm a food producer. I farm in partnership with my husband, so we have sheep and beef on our farm. Awesome. We're hill country, which is, there's a little bit in the background behind me on the screen. We're classic East Coast hill country. So yeah, beautiful part of the world, beautiful valley. And yeah, I've been in New Zealand for 30 years this year. So I met my husband overseas when traveling, and we met in Gallipoli, of all places. Yeah, so cool. Yeah, it was really cool. I was backpacking and he was in a combi van with other Kiwis, and my girlfriend I was backpacking with, the Aussie, said to me, "You'll marry that man one day." And I said, "Oh no, I'm not going to get married." But anyway, that was a long time ago, so 30 years this year. So we have two amazing children. They both live in Canberra in Australia, and Emma is a diabetes nurse educator at Canberra Hospital in the Peds department. Wow. And our son Jamie is a graphic designer, motion designer. So he's currently doing contract work and working full time at the hospital as well. So yeah, which is really cool.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, what else about me? I'm very much passionate about environmental sustainability on our farm. So we've got 536 hectares and we've closed up part of the farm to build biodiversity in a native bush block. So very much focused on those sorts of things on our place. Love animals, absolutely love animals, love dogs, house dogs, working dogs. Got a couple of naughty cats that bring things in at night. Yeah, and I think for me, being here and being in this beautiful part of the country, I'm very blessed to be in a position that, you know, we have food and I have a veggie garden and things like that. So that's where I spend a bit of my leisure and yeah, a bit of self-sufficiency, which is great. Yeah, very lucky to have a very supportive and loving husband and yeah, great kids.
That's so cool, Sandra. That's such a really nice answer to who is Sandra. When I ask that question to every person that's on the podcast, you know, you're really just, it's such an open question, you know, you're allowing them to just go, okay, how is it best to explain who I am? But I thought that was such a lovely introduction to you and, you know, background, not just from a work perspective, but from a wider perspective of who you are. So thank you for that, and a great way to kick off the podcast. I'd love to know, what does day-to-day look like for you? What does a day in the life of Sandra look like?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I tend to, during my working week, I tend to separate my days out. If I don't, I get bogged down and doing too much in one area and not enough in the other. So I have certain days for certain things. I'm very process driven. And that comes out in my coaching as well, very much process driven. And so I make sure that I have certain days for certain things, like my, so my governance days are Friday, unless something really urgent comes up. My coaching days might be Tuesday and Wednesday, or depending on how many clients I've got. Today, for example, is a Monday. So usually I would be catching up on emails and looking at board agendas and going through paperwork and things like that and catching up. And then I'll have one day for the farm. So on the governance side of it, but also the operational side as well. So I'll go through and check where our strategies, you know, whether our strategies need a little bit of tweaking. And then I'll do work on the operational side, on the financial and management side as well. So very structured. In saying that, I'm like everybody else, Organising off course and I'll have to pull myself back in. So, you know, definitely not perfect. So it does take a little bit of organising when you work from home too. You know, COVID stopped my travel, so I've actually had to be more organised at home and more disciplined. But in a day-to-day situation, I always have time for myself too. So I'll jump off my desk and out of my office and go and grab a cup of tea, or sit out and talk to the dogs for, you know, 15 minutes, half an hour. So I have that time out, which gives me perspectives and refreshes and back into the rest of the work. So yeah, so it's pretty structured by days.
Yeah, no, it's good, and I can relate to the whole working at home thing. It has to be in ways, you know, you've got to have the structure to what each day looks like, and then bring in the balance with, you know, grabbing a coffee or a cup of tea and you know, feeling like you're doing something different rather than just sitting in front of the desk the whole day. Because if you were in an office or traveling, it would look, you know, different as well. So that is important. That's cool. I'd love to hear a little bit. You go. Sorry,
I was just going to say, the one thing that I would say is that it's really important to make things achievable during your day. And that's what I find early on when I was working from home, you know, when we first transitioned into COVID, my lists were far too long. So it's really important to make sure that your lists are achievable, so you feel like you've got some success at the end of the day. So that's one thing I have adjusted my way of working as well.
Yeah, it's a good reminder, that's for sure. I'd love to hear, you know, you've touched on your coaching and the farm and all that sort of stuff, but what has your career journey looked like to date? And then what does life look like now in terms of balancing those things?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Balancing is always the question on people's mind. My career journey's been a little bit up and down. So I started in the finance industry in Australia, and through all my young years, I was very much not overly career focused. I was like, need a job, let's have fun on the weekends and really, you know, enjoy my life. I have a lot of friends, which I still keep in contact with. And
Cool.
yeah, I wasn't thinking too much about the future. You know, in 18, 19, 20, I went to work when I was 18.
Wow.
And so just progressed through a little bit of different organisations in the finance industry. And then in my mid-20s, I decided to go overseas. And that was awesome. And I ended up working in London on and off for a couple of years. And that's where I found that I had a real knack for auditing and for attention to detail and process. And I think that's where, for me, it really kicked off inside me what I was really good at. And then coming back to Aussie after that, Ian came back to New Zealand. I went to Australia and managed a branch of St. George over there, a new branch, and spent a year doing that, and then decided, hey, we better get married. And I moved to New Zealand. So from there, it was quite a little bit different, because when I first came to New Zealand, I'd come from London, so I had this great power suit and my briefcase and all that sort of stuff, and I'd be doing that in Aussie too. And I came to New Zealand and I thought, oh, here I am in the middle of Tairawhiti and a farming area, and a lot of the wives didn't work back then. So, and I just said to Ian, I cannot stay home because my brain just needs that motivation. I need to be doing something. And I'm not a great housewife. I'm not a great cleaner and all those sorts of things. So, and I wasn't a great cook. So I thought I have to go and do things that I enjoy and that I have strengths in. So I rocked up to the ANZ in Gisborne with my power suit on and my briefcase and said, hey, you know, here's my CV, because in those days there wasn't email. Here's my CV. Can I sit down and have a talk? And, you know, if any opportunities come up. And it's funny because I have some friends close friends now that worked in the bank, and they watched me walk in and they went, wow, who is this strange chick? And they just laughed so much, because it was very cruisy back then. I mean, it still is pretty cruisy in Gisborne. So anyway, they gave me a job as a teller and I lasted about 6 weeks. And I said, hey, if you've got any other jobs, let me know, but I just can't do this sort of work anymore. And then about a month later, some girls were going on maternity leave, so I ended up doing relationship banking with agri and commercial over a couple of years while ladies were going on maternity leave. And then I had my children. Cool. So spent a bit of time at home and then managed to get a job at Eastwood Hill Arboretum in setting up the administration and finance side of the Arboretum, which is the National Arboretum of New Zealand. So I worked on there for probably on and off for about 10 or 11 years, and progressed through different, you know, we had lots of different projects there. It was a not-for-profit, a charitable trust. And then sort of thought, well, what am I going to do now? I sort of got to the point, I got a little bit stale and I felt I needed something extra. So Ian and I just purchased the farm, and I decided I'd come back and work on the farm. So I spent a lot of years doing that, but working on the strategy side and the working on the business, not in the business as much, but then I got dragged into the business as well. So, I spent a lot of years doing that and had my own dogs, mustering stock and things like that, and working in the yards with Ian and really looking after the farm side and environmental side. But then that wasn't my strength, you know, I wasn't where my strengths laid, and I realized that I was wasting myself a little bit. So in 2014, I did some PD, did some professional development, and that's where my journey really started off again, and found myself. So a lot of the years, especially for agri women, they lose themselves a little bit, and I think it's probably the same for ladies in towns and cities, that you lose your sense of worth a little bit and where your value lies. So for me, I really felt the PD was the kickoff. And I ended up doing some coaching and some coaching training, professional coaching training. And I've got one more coaching training session course to go before I do my international accreditation. But yeah, I suppose I had a few people that really saw something in me at that point that I didn't see myself. And those ladies have mentored me all the way through and coached me. And that's when my my career really took off again, which was great. So I had a lull in the middle, so to speak, just of how to find myself and where my value was, where I could add value to myself and people around me. So so the last few years I've done a lot of coaching for the Agri-Women's Development Trust and facilitated programs all around New Zealand, which has been really cool. And what else have I done? Into the governance space and those sort of things. So it's just really taken off. Which I'm very excited about.
That is so exciting. Oh, what a cool journey that it's been. And then now for you to be able to be impacting other women in the agri space is very great opportunity with where you are now in life, finding your feet again, finding who you are, that sense of purpose again. I can imagine it would be hard in that season of life, and so I think that's a really great thing that you're doing there. What is one thing that you wish you knew at the start of your career journey?
I think for me, my father was a policeman and my mum was a teacher, so my dad was very do it my way or the highway a lot of the times as a policeman. And I think I grew up a little bit like that. So back years ago, I've always been in a leadership sort of space, so to speak, like committees, sports teams, sports groups, those sorts of things. I think now understanding what leadership is and what team building is and how you can enable others. I think if I'd known that back then, 20 or 30 or 40, well, I won't say 40, but say 30 years ago, I used to lead from I've got to get in there and do it. I've got to do it because that's what happens, So it's not about doing it yourself. It's about enabling others to be able to find their strengths, to be able to move things forward for the same outcome. And I think if I had have known that people will do it differently, but you'll get to that outcome anyway. And you're there to support them shoulder to shoulder or behind them and help them move forward. So, I think that's something I would have been nice to learn 20 years ago or be aware of 20 years ago.
Yeah, so great. Empowering others. I love that. And a massive part of your coaching, I'm sure, is that empowering others to then do it themselves. As a coach now, what are your expertise and things that you enjoy coaching others on?
So there's two different sides, like the agri side. So primary industries is my real wheelhouse. That's where I've come through. I understand primary industries. I understand sheep and beef, dairy, hort, those sorts of things. And for me, it's about having the good bones of a business. If the good bones are not there, it's really hard to actually move your business forward. So, working on the finance, working on the process, the environmental for agri is so important now too. And I think my wheelhouse is agri, but I also enjoy small, medium enterprise SMEs. I love the startups. I love the fact that if people are in a business that's been there a couple of years or they're just getting going, I love the fact that it's helping them set their processes in place and helping them to look at their goals, look at their vision, look at that blue sky thinking, and what do you want out of this business? Because a lot of small SMEs start out with this amazing idea, but then the process is not around it about how they can move forward and make it successful and profitable and actually reach the goals they're after. So, I actually love dealing with people that are not sure how to move forward and how they build on their strengths, but how they use the strengths around them as well. I think the financial side for me is really important, but it's also about having those good bones and working on the business, not in it. In agri especially, actually it's not just agri. In most business, a lot of businesses, when you're starting out or you're young or you're in that middle ground time, you're working so hard 24/7 to have a successful business. You forget to actually step back and look at the bigger picture. And that's where I find that my coaching is actually helps a lot in that way. Okay, let's step back, look at where you want to go and what you want to achieve. And how do we put some clear key performance indicators, some stepping stones in so that you can reach those goals. And what are they going to be? Talking through that sort of thing. So
That's great. That's really, really cool. And it must be really rewarding work for you as well, being able to set people through that process, especially if you're passionate about that startup space and, seeing something from very small being birthed and brought to life is an exciting place to be. Do you have any client stories that stand out to you? Maybe one or two?
Well, it's funny. One of the things, I'm very private and very respectful of the clients that I deal with.
Totally.
So I don't tend to talk a lot about my clients, but I will. There is one little story of a couple that I was working with down in the South Island, and they have a startup. They've been in business a couple of years, and one of them is the ideas person, and the other one is a process type person. But they'd swapped their roles around at the start, so they actually were working not in their strength areas. Yeah. So, after the initial, hi, I'm Sandra, let's get to know each other to see whether we're going to fit as coach and coachee. Yeah. After that, and we started a few sessions, it was really obvious after, that initial discussion. So it was working through that and stepping through that with them and helping them come to the light bulb conclusion that, hey, we're in the wrong roles, we need to swap. And since then, it's just, the business has gone just, 100 miles an hour. It's been so nice to watch and to be part of.
That's so cool, being able to see that from such an early stage in the relationship, and such a small shift that you wouldn't really think. It's not like you go to coaching to go, oh, we know we need to switch our roles around, but for that to happen and to see growth from the get-go, that's very, very cool. I like that. What's the favorite part of what you do?
Oh, it's seeing people actually, a lot of people say it's the light bulb. For me, it's just that bright light in the eyes that come up, and you can see that the mind's working around, and they suddenly realize that, hey, I actually came up with that idea myself, and then you're off talking about what they can do and where they can go and bring it back in and then letting it go again. And, it's like a ball of string. It keeps rolling and you pull it back a little bit and roll and pull it back a little bit. But yeah, it's so cool. The light in the eyes is what does it for me. And I love that part of coaching. It's awesome, enabling other people to actually come up with the ideas and look at their strengths and be able to have some direction and goals about how they get there.
That's cool. I like that. That's great. What on the other hand, I'm sure with anything good, there's some harder parts of the journey too. What's a challenge in your line of work?
The biggest challenge is people understanding how beneficial coaching can be. Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge. When you're coaching someone, they realize and they understand the benefits of coaching, but when you're talking to people to start with, they don't get what you can get out of that. So I think it's understanding what coaches do and how they do it.
Yeah, totally. Couldn't agree more. What is the most exciting thing about the future of agribusiness?
Oh, wow. Agribusiness. I mean, I'm very passionate about food production. So I look at it as food production. People have to eat, in New Zealand and around the world. And we've got a lot of problems with food security at the moment. But for me, there's so much scope. There's technology, there's environmental improvements, there's social. One of the big things, I think, the exciting things is people are understanding how important their teams are and how important people are to the industry. I think there's a lot of challenges with coming up with legislation and things like that. There's challenges with the type of food that people eat, but one of the things that I think is an opportunity is telling the story about how food is produced, because a lot of children don't understand that, and a lot of adults don't either. They think things grow in a supermarket. So, for me, there's just so much scope about what we can do telling our story. I find that's a really important part for me.
I like that angle on it, actually, the telling of the stories. And New Zealand's a great place to do that because a lot of our food production is in our backyard, and telling those relatable stories of the people around us that are helping us get food on the table is something special. So lots of opportunities there. That's great.
Yeah, I think I also feel that it's important for people on the land to understand what urban people are after, and people that are in the cities and towns to understand how the people in the land work. And I think we've got a little disconnect there at the moment, and well, there has been for a while. But you know, we're not all rich farmers out in the areas. I mean, a lot of people have got a lot of debt, and they're running a business like somebody in town's running a business. So it's about talking to one another and understanding what we all do for the benefit of the whole country. You know, that's a big thing for me. And telling the story is a good way to do that.
Yeah, that's massive. Yeah, wow. That's my brain's just like, wow, lots of opportunities there. You are a board member on a couple of non-profits as well. I'd love for you to just unpack that and tell us a little bit more about that and why that's important to you.
Yeah, sure. So I've been fortunate to be elected to the board of Rural Women New Zealand, and I'm board chair. So that's my role with that. And I also am the health portfolio convener, so looking at the health in rural communities and what's available and what's not available. So that's a really important one. I'm very values-based. So when I'm coaching, I'm the same. I'm values-based. And when I apply for any board, it's on the basis of the value of the organisation, the mission of the organisation, and how that connects into our rural communities. So Rural Women New Zealand is an important one for me. And then I'm on the board of Endometriosis New Zealand, which is another non-profit. So I'm an endo sufferer, and my daughter is an endo sufferer as well. And when I looked at their mission and their values, they aligned with me. So I was elected on there last year onto the board, and at the moment I'm interim chair of that board. And we're doing a little bit of a role revolving thing, so I'm taking over at the moment as interim chair. And then I'm on another board called the Rural Communities Trust, and I'm the Federated Farmers representative on that trust. And that's a small trust that people apply to for donations to cover like small projects in their rural communities. And you must be under a certain population level to qualify. So I find that's really rewarding, that we can help people that can't normally get funding in other areas to do the small projects that they're after. Some of them are big projects, but we only are able to donate small amounts. So I mean, I'm really happy with the boards that I'm actually on, because for me, it's all about the values and the mission and community out in the provinces. You know, there's a lot of people struggling. You know, we know that. So yeah, I'm really blessed to be on those boards and working as hard as I can for people.
Wow, that's so inspiring. I'm like, how do you have time for all of this? No wonder you have to be so structured within your week.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely structured.
For sure, I can see that now even clearer. But very, very special what you've said around just how important it is that it aligns with your values, with your sense of purpose and the mission that you're on, and a diverse range as well. And being able to use your skills and your gifts for these non-profits is a special opportunity, that's for sure. I'd like to know, how did you get connected in with the Icehouse?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting story. Trust Tairawhiti in Gizzy. There was a lady that was working there called Wendy Gatley, and she tapped me on the shoulder about getting involved with the Regional Business Network. And as a coach, and you know, I had a couple of meetings with people that were prospective, and then she said, "Oh, I know what we can do. We'll connect you to the Icehouse." So had a bit of a generalized casual chat with Michaela from down in Hawke's Bay, and then had a talk with Darylyn, and she said, "Hey, this could work really well. We want somebody for the regions." And I was doing a lot of travel, and with my role in the Agri-Women's Development Trust, and it was getting to the point with COVID, I couldn't travel very much, and it was, you know, a lot of travel. So I decided it'd be really nice to do something locally for my own region, because I hadn't done a lot of work in my own region. So and I thought it really sort of aligned with where I was thinking, you know, that I would like to go with my career path in coaching. And so that's where it all started. So Wendy Gatley at Trust Tairawhiti, and she's actually now in Taupo. She's left our region, which is a shame. But a lot of thanks to Wendy for actually connecting me with the Icehouse, and very excited to be working with the Icehouse. It's great.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Wendy. Well, we thank her too, because it's great to have you, good to have you part of the coaching, you know, team and sense of community, and know that, you know, as we head into the future and promote you more and have you part of that region. It's just going to be really influential. So it's great. Would love to get your thoughts on this big question, which is one piece of advice for business owners looking to grow in 2022.
Look for a coach that you can work with.
Yeah.
Look for someone that you can get on well with, that is aligned with where you would like to go with your business, and work with a coach. I mean, we've got a lot of challenges out there coming out of COVID, and there's still COVID issues. So, you know, the quicker you can get in working with a good coach that you can get along with and be part of your business, I think that's a really positive move going into 2022. Well, I mean, we're April, aren't we? So we're, you know, nearly 4 months in. So yeah, get cracking and find a good coach.
Get cracking for sure. You mentioned it before in the podcast that people say, you know, they hold back from getting a coach, or they're not sure the benefits of what it would be. What do you say to those people if they come across your path to sing how important coaching is from the rooftops?
Yeah, so I sort of ask people what would they like to achieve, you know, where do they want to go, and then I ask them how they're going to get there. And if you get well, I'm not really sure, well, that answers the question. If you're not really sure, a coach is going to be able to help you with that.
Yeah, that's so important. I love that. Nice. A very interesting conversation with you, Sandra. I really do feel like I've got to know you better, and looking forward to promoting this across our channel so that our community can get to know you better as well. But one question I like to finish off with is, what is one interesting fact that not many people know about you?
Yeah, that's an interesting one too. And a good question, Bryar. I'm very private. I'm a very private person. So I don't tend to tell a lot of people about me so much, except my really close friends. But from not a business perspective, one of the things that people don't know about me, and I don't think my friends do in New Zealand either, is that when I was 4.5, this is a crazy story. My father used to tell this story when he was alive. When I was 4.5, I was very much a swimmer. So they had me swimming very early. At 4.5, I won the 50 meters butterfly in Yass, which is a town in Australia where I was little. And I never really thought I'd done it. Dad said, yes, you did. And I said, no, I didn't. But yeah, 50 meters butterfly as a 4.5-year-old. I couldn't believe it. So it sort of stuck in my brain. Yeah. And apparently he even had to get people to tell me it was true as well, that were there on the day. So that's a non-business thing.
Yeah. I love that.
So I used to be a swimmer. Yeah, and butterfly was my best stroke. So
wow, 4.5 though. That's what we call advanced. That's amazing. Very, very cool. I love that, and it's always nice to finish on a personal note. But honestly, Sandra, a really interesting conversation, and I'm really looking forward to having you part of the Icehouse community going forward. So thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bryar. It's been fun.